There's a solar installation company in Minnesota called Wolf River Electric. By all accounts, they're a good business with a great culture until people started Googling them. Because when they did, Google's AI overviews confidently told searchers that Wolf River was being sued by the Minnesota Attorney General for deceptive sales practices, hidden fees, and misleading customers. Except none of it was true. There wasn't a lawsuit. They didn't have deceptive sales practices or hidden fees. They weren't losing customers. The AI stitched it together from sources that said no such thing and presented it as fact right at the top of the search results page. One customer actually canceled a $150,000 solar installation contract after reading the review. The company says it can now trace more than $24 million in lost business to the false claims, and they're suing Google for as much as $210 million. After a judge ruled in January that Google fumbled its attempt to move the case to federal court, it's grinding its way through Minnesota State Court as we speak. And Google's defense? That it isn't responsible for what its own AI wrote. The company is leaning on Section 230, the "we're a platform, not a publisher" argument, and at least one prominent media law scholar thinks that argument might work. The question in this case is, who wrote the AI overview? Under current law, I think the answer pretty clearly is, unfortunately, not Google. Let that sink in for a minute. The AI invented a lawsuit. The invention cost a real company tens of millions of dollars, and the maker of AI is arguing, perhaps successfully right now, that no one is legally accountable for it. Now I want you to think about that from your own perspective. Put your brand in that story. How anxious does it make you feel? It makes me feel very anxious. In last week's FinSucks content, I told you there's a brand new risk category that almost nobody at the leadership table is managing. And that is what AI is saying about your company when you're not in the room. Not, are we showing up at AI Answers? We covered that in the visibility engineering playbook. And I warned you then that getting into the answer is only half the job. This is the other half. When you do show up, is what it says true? On this week's FinSucks podcast episode, we'll talk about the reputation risk of AI and why it's your job, my job, our job to protect the brand.
If you're a communications pro who works hard, doesn't compromise quality, and gets the job done, welcome home. We'll share our tips, tricks, and stories, and together we will change the face of PR. Spin sucks, but we don't. With the Spin Sucks podcast, here's Jenny Dietrich.
Welcome back to the Spin Sucks podcast. I'm Jenny Dietrich. Before we get started, I have a little tidbit for you. Did you know that if you can't finish watching right now, you can subscribe to the audio version of the show? We're on all the platforms where you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter at spinsucks.com and receive it in your inbox every Tuesday morning from yours truly. I write those newsletters myself, so it literally is from yours truly. Let's dispense with "this is a future problem" objection first. I think so many of us are like, oh, one more thing. I've got to think about this now. Let's worry about it later. Later is already here because the data is unambiguous. Adobe analyzed more than 1 trillion visits to US retail sites and found AI-referred traffic grew 393% year over year in the first quarter of this year. And by March, visitors arriving from AI tools converted 42% better than everyone else. A year ago, AI traffic converted 38% worse than regular traffic, and now it's converting 42% better. That's a huge swing. It converts best in channel in 1 year, which makes sense if you think about it, right? Someone who asked their AI tool of choice what to buy, they got an answer, they clicked through, they've already been pre-sold by the machine. The only difference between now and a year ago is that they did their research in the answer engine rather than on your website. And that, my friends, is exactly the problem. The conversation about you is happening somewhere you can't see, built from sources you don't control, delivered with total confidence, even if it's wrong, to people who will never fact check it. Your prospective customer, the journalist who is backgrounding a story, the board member who's running due diligence, the candidate who's deciding whether or not to accept your offer. They ask, it answers, and you find out only what it said if something breaks. A deal that goes quiet, a weird question in an interview, a $150,000 contract canceled over a lawsuit that never existed. When AI misrepresents a brand, it usually fails in one of three ways, and each one has a different fix, so we'll run through all of them. Number one, it's stale. The LLMs, the large language models, heavily favor content published in the last 12 months. But when fresh material is scarce, they revert to the old pricing, the divested product line, or the executive who left the company 2 years ago. If your organization has changed and your public footprint has not, AI will describe the company you used to be. Number two, it's spliced. This is what happened to Wolf River. The model pulled fragments from multiple sources, a regulatory action against some solar company, complaints about an industry practice, and assembled them into a single confident narrative about the wrong brand. Nothing it read said what it wrote. It synthesized. And number three, it's invented. And then sometimes it just makes things up. Research reported by Pans Lauren Hill in O'Dwyer's found that 31% of ChatGPT citations contained fabricated or misattributed information. 31% misinformation, made up CEO quotes, your research credited to a competitor, or reports that don't even exist. And my favorite is that MIT research found that AI uses 34% more confident language when it's hallucinating. Of course it does. The less it knows, the louder it gets. We've all worked with that guy. Muck Rack's State of PR research found that 73% of PR professionals call AI search visibility the next frontier for the profession. And in that same study, 29% say no one in the organization owns it. 39% aren't measuring it at all. Yep, you heard that correctly. Nearly 3/4 of us agree that AI is where brand perception is being decided. And in a third of organizations, it's nobody's job. Ask the question inside your organization. Who owns what AI says about us? And watch the hot potato begin. Legal assumes comms is watching it. Comms assumes it's an SEO thing. SEO points at whoever bought the shiny new GEO tool last quarter. The GEO tool, bless its heart, produces a dashboard nobody reads. Meanwhile, the machines keep answering. We have a crisis plan for what happens when a reporter gets it wrong. We have social listening for what happens when a customer gets loud. But the channel your buyers now trust enough to convert 42% better than any other? Crickets. So let's fix it. Let's talk about the discipline you need to govern your AI reputation. As I talk you through this, notice that none of this is new work. It's work you already know how to do. It's pointed at a new service. For once, I am not going to add to your overly full plate. Yay me, congratulations. I'm not going to do it. You're going to refocus a little bit what you already do, but you're not going to add more. So move number one, baseline what's being said. You cannot govern a narrative you haven't read. So the first move is an audit. Run the questions your buyers actually ask, not tell me about brand, but the shortlist questions, the comparison questions, the is it true that ... questions across the major models, and document what comes back. Do it quarterly at minimum. Recency bias means the answer you got in January is not the answer your prospect is getting in June. Honestly, if you have time, I would do it monthly, but quarterly is non-negotiable. Then score what you find. Is it accurate? Is it current? Is it sourced from places you'd want? How does your narrative compare to your competition? This is narrative share of voice, one of the 4 AI visibility metrics we covered earlier this year, doing exactly the job it was designed to do. The baseline is not busy work. It's the difference between I think we're fine and knowing where you're exposed. And you'll remember from last week's episode that here's where we're exposed and what that exposure costs is a sentence your CFO understands in their very bones, like deep, deep, deep in those bones. So it's a great conversation to have, and it's great knowledge for you to have. Move number 2 is to fix your source of truth. When AI gets you wrong, the instinct is to be angry at the model. The productive move is to look at what the model read, what it brought together and observed. The models build their picture of you from your owned media properties, your website, your blog, from earned coverage, and from third-party sources, so review sites, directories, Wikipedia, and online forums. If your about page is vague, your newsroom is 2 years still, your executive bios contradict LinkedIn, and your last piece of thought leadership predates the pandemic, you have left the machine to freelance and figure it out on their own. You need a current, unambiguous, machine-readable set of facts about your company, who you are, what you sell, who runs it, what's true, published on properties you control, structured so the models can parse it. This is the same anchor content and schema work from the visibility playbook we talked about earlier this year, doing double duty. And consistency is non-negotiable. When your owned media content and your earned media coverage tell the same story, they're consistent, the models get to be confident about the right things. When they conflict, the models guess, and that's what causes a $150,000 contract cancellation. Move number 3, correct the record with infrastructure, not just complaints. Even if you are absolutely right about, and you have a case to fight, Wolf River taught us that the legal route is slow and may end up being a dead end, even if you're right, even if Google should pay up, that it could end up being a dead end for them. That case has been in court for more than a year. The false answers did their damage in the first few months, and Google is arguing, with real legal scholars agreeing, that it isn't liable for what its AI writes at all. Mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing, but that's where we are. Whatever the courts eventually decide, you cannot build your reputation strategy on the hope that they'll decide it quickly or in your favor. Yes, use the feedback mechanisms. The models and search engines have them, and documented corrections matter. But the durable fix is publishing. Because the models weigh fresh, credible content so heavily, a steady drumbeat of current owned media content and new earned coverage doesn't just add to your narrative, it overwrites the stale and spliced material that the models are learning on. The correction mechanism for AI is the work you already do. Fresh anchor content, real media relations with the traditional outlets and the newsletter authors and podcasters the models also read. Third-party sources kept current. Recency bias is usually framed as a burden. In a correction scenario, it becomes your very best friend. And then move number 4, you want to give it an owner and an escalation path. So that fixes the 29% problem. You put it in writing. Someone owns the quarterly audit. Someone owns the source of truth pages. There's a defined threshold for when an inaccuracy is a shrug, when it's a correction required, and when it's a crisis. And your crisis plan now has an AI section because the machines are telling people something false about us is no longer a hypothetical. Ask Wolf River. It can happen to you. It can happen to me. It can happen to any one of us. This does not require a new hire or a reorganization. It requires a decision. One meeting, one roles and responsibilities row, one spreadsheet, done. The only question is who, and you can guess I have an opinion on that too. So if you strip away the technology and look at what this work actually is, monitoring what's being said about your organization, maintaining the sources of truth, building relationships with the voices that shape the narrative, correcting the record, and managing escalations when they go sideways. We have a name for that. It's called reputation management, and communicators have owned it for a century. It's just a different audience. It used to be journalists, analysts, and people in the room. Now it's journalists, analysts, and people in the room, and the machines that answer for you when you're not there. And unlike the journalists, the machines never call for comment, so you don't have the opportunity to correct the record. In the visibility engineering playbook a few weeks ago, I told you we handed SEO to marketing because it felt too technical, and we spent 15 years regretting it. AI visibility was the first test of whether we've learned that lesson. This is the second one. And it's bigger because this isn't about being discovered. It's about being true. It's about being factual. It's about being informative. Nobody else in your organization is trained for that. Legal reacts, SEO optimizes. Communications is the only function whose entire job is to ensure the story is being told accurately, credibly, and coherently. So claim it. Take the 4 moves into your next leadership meeting alongside the number from your baseline audit and say the sentence out loud that nobody else will. Here's what AI is saying about us. Here's what's wrong. And here is who is fixing it. You want to be the person who's fixing it. You want to be the person who owns the answer. If you'd like to learn more about managing your brand's AI reputation, join us in the SpinSucks community. It's a great place to get advice, brainstorm ideas, and build real relationships with your peers. You can find us at spinsucks.com/community. That's spinsucks.com/community. And make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. We're posting tips, how-tos, cheat sheets, and more every week. I'll see you next week. Bye.